Hi, I'm Viki and I work as an augmented reality developer. I'm just going to warn you, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I might cough a little bit and be a little bit raspy, but I should be okay. Just out of interest, has anyone in the room, have you all heard of augmented reality before? Pretty much. Have most people had a go at it at all? In any way? A few? Fair enough then. So yeah, I'm here today to talk about how you can use augmented reality as part of a successful exhibition, because that's what I do as my job. I work for a VR and AR company called Zuba VR, and we build software for lots of different clients for different purposes. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out. Sorry, I'm just having an issue with something. Yeah. Do you know how you can get that to scroll down? Okay, we'll it'll be fine. Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, we make AR and VR software for different clients, whether it's companies trying to educate about pharmaceutical products or heritage projects where they want to take people back in time. But what is AR? It's a new technology which is rising in popularity besides virtual reality. And virtual reality is obviously, that's inside a headset, such as an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, or even a Google Cardboard. It's a fully immersive experience. You don't tend to be able to see anything outside of there. Whereas augmented reality uses a device like a camera, such as a mobile phone, and it places digital content within our world. And the term augmented reality was first coined in 1990 by a Boeing researcher as he described the display that overlaid digital components into the real world. But the idea has been around for much, much longer. Back in the 1700s, magicians used to use smoke and mirrors to augment ghosts onto their stage to try and convince people that spirits had come back to life. But technology has moved on a little bit since then. In the 90s, they had the first use of augmented reality in an entertainment setting where they would place lines onto football fields when they were televised. But for personal use, AR has kind of been slowly ticking along until 2016 when Niantic released Pokemon Go, which combines the very, very popular video game franchise with an AR app that uses geolocation. And now everyone's got, and now everyone has AR-capable devices just in their pockets, because mobile phones are absolutely perfect for this kind of thing. They have what are called micro electromechanical sensors inside. And these are sensors such as the accelerometer, GPS, and compass, which help the software work out where you might be and works in connection with the camera to place things in the world. The most recent iPhones as well have a special double camera on the back, which work to calculate depth, which adds even more to the augmented reality experience. So why use augmented reality? It's really fun and amazing. I think when you work in a digital world for so long, you kind of forget how much people really, really find these kind of things magical. I went to a careers evening the other week and showed a group of kids some of the very, very basic things that we do in my company. And they just thought it was amazing. They thought it was like magic that you could just look at images and all these animations and things would appear. It's so awesome. And people can find this kind of tech really immersive. The British Museum ran an exhibition where they used VR to, where they used VR as part of a Bronze Age exhibition, where people could come in and they could put a headset on and wander around like a little Bronze Age village. And the feedback that they got from it, that it was an incredibly immersive experience and it was a really great way to kind of really see what these places used to look like. But AR has the advantage over VR that it can be a shared experience. Because if you're going around with a tablet, there can be groups of friends using it, or parents and children. And it also utilises a phone that everyone carries. I mean, you always see pictures online of like kids in museums who are like playing on their phones instead of enjoying what's around them. Well, why don't you try and harness that and get them to get their phones out in order to interact with what's around them? Also, in the advertising world, social media has made marketing more of like a two-way street. In the past, people used to get marketed to in a very passive way, but now people want to engage more and want to create personal stories. And that's kind of passed over to like museums and exhibitions as well. And having these interactive features means that people don't have to just come up to an exhibition and see it in one way. They can interact, and they can kind of curate their own experience, which can be really, really nice for them to do. And additionally, when you take an augmented reality software to, say you're part of an exhibition and you want to take a load of your products to show to somebody, well, if it's all in a tablet, then you can take so many more products than you would normally. And you can show things to people, sorry, and you can take these products to places that wouldn't necessarily be as accessible otherwise. So here are some examples of how AR can be used. And the most common use case involves tapping to place things. So the first app there is made by it's called BBC Civilizations app, and you can place all of these different artifacts within your own living room, which you can then interact with. So you can restore certain items, you could like paint on what things used to look like, and you can interact with them in a way that you would never normally be able to, because they'd normally be shut behind glass cabinets. The second one here is one of the most popular AR apps on the App Store. It's the IKEA Place app. It's really simple. You just tap and you can place furniture all in your house. There's a lot of apps like that, and it's a really cool way of seeing what furniture or anything would look like in your own space. Another example is using information labels. Now, we worked with a local company who want to sell luxury biking products, and they want to communicate the information about their latest wheels and shoes, but they wanted their stands to remain quite like clean and minimalist. So we created an app specially for them that would be preloaded onto iPads, which were around the stand. And by looking at the little signs that say like reveal for information, it would make all these labels appear, which you could hover over and see more information, and it just keeps everything looking a lot cleaner and a lot nicer. There are also a number of apps where users can kind of create things themselves. There's an awful lot like World Brush and Just Align, where you can draw in augmented space yourself, which are really, really awesome. Like, people make music videos with these things, and you can just kind of like move around and draw and then walk back through what you've just created. There are also augmented reality colouring books. So kids could come along and they could colour in a picture, and when the app scans it, it makes a 3D model coloured in just how the image is, which is really, really cool. Like, I'm surprised more people don't use that one, because it's really, really nice. And you can enhance what is already there. I've seen an awful lot of museums and galleries which cover skeletons. So for instance, in that one, you've got a fish skeleton, which when viewed with the app, it shows what it used to look like. Or ones where you'd look at ruins and it would rebuild a big Roman villa in a big like Time Team-esque reconstruction. So you could allow viewers to see what things used to look like in different stages of their life or in different time periods. And we actually did a project with a company who commissioned us to make this big swimming pool, which you can see at the bottom. And when you look at the swimming pool with an iPad, it does this. This is just a very rough video from the beginning. I'm not able to show like what the final one looked like. But as you can see, it starts to look like a real swimming pool with actual people swimming in it and little sharks and things going up and down. And it was a really, really nice effect. And as well as making something extrude out of the ground, AR can let us make virtual windows that we can peer inside digital space. Some of you may have seen this one where we created an app for Crack magazine because they just had a special issue featuring an interview with Aphex Twin. And we made an app that when you view the pages of the magazine, it would make a kind of glitchy effect and would kind of extrude in and kind of replicate the graphics that are in his music videos. We've also done 180-degree videos. So we use a special camera and it captures a video that would be played on a hemisphere, which you obviously can't view on a real television, but by putting it into AR, we can make little windows appear that you can go up to and peer through from different angles, and it's like you're looking through it. Here is the one that we made for Crack magazine. It's a bit freaky really, but it's pretty cool. He's definitely something. You can also take advantage of the growing popularity of filters on Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and augment things directly onto your consumers' faces. There are plenty of dog ears and Santa hats, but there are also lots of branded ones. There's Lego heads and Minions and things like that. But some makeup companies and like I think it's Michael Kors as well, they've taken advantage of offering consumers the chance to try something out before they buy it. So you could try different kinds of makeup on your face or try different sunglasses or whatever. And then also when they're sharing these images that they take, they're advertising your product because it's written on there. But it's just a nice way of taking advantage of that kind of technology. And geo-positioning. You've probably all seen Pokemon Go. It uses the GPS sensors in your mobile phone to find your exact position, and it will spawn lots of little Pokemon around you. You may recognise this. This was practically just outside here. And then when you go to catch the Pokemon, it can go into an AR view where you are throwing Pokemon and it looks like they're in the world around you. But there's also, you can go a bit crazy with AR. We've just finished a project with the Bristol Old Vic Theatre, who, if you live in Bristol, probably know they've just had this huge big reopening of their lobby area. They've got this lovely new restaurant and bar in there. And we worked in collaboration with Limbic Cinema to make an app that's based in that space. You pick one of the iPads up from the reception, and then you can go around to various points in the space, and there's portals that appear, as you can see, like the far one, and then you go through the portal and you can see what the space used to look like in different periods of history, and you can line it up particularly well. It's really, really nice. And there's different ways that you can publish your apps once you decide on what it is that you want to make. There's different ways to kind of publish that and get that out to the general public. When we're developing AR applications, we normally use Unity, which is a C# based game engine with Apple and Android's own add-ons. Now, Unity is a pretty powerful engine, and we can make some very beautiful and complex software with it, which is then deployed to tablets and phones, which is normally iPads and iPhones and Samsung Galaxies. And these apps, they can get pushed to the App Store, which is great if you've got quite a fairly big experience and you want to keep adding to it. But you have to be careful with like file sizes with the App Store, because you can't... We found that AR things tend to be quite big files, and you can't download anything more than 150 megabytes over your own data. So you'd have to ensure that the person has access to free Wi-Fi if they're going to be too big. And also, lots of people kind of don't quite get that you need a certain level of phone to run these things. So you have to ensure that you run the risk of people kind of coming to an event or going to a place and then not being able to run the app if they don't have a good enough phone. But you can also have preloaded apps, which are very common in shows and exhibits where an app is created for a specific purpose or for a very particular location. Companies will buy or rent a load of iPads and we will load the app onto them, which means that the apps can be a lot bigger and a lot more complex, as you don't have to worry so much about downloads, and you know that everyone's going to be able to run it because it's made for that purpose. But that does kind of come with the cost of renting all of those iPads, and you wouldn't want to do this if you're over too big of a space, because then you've got to think about, well, what happens if someone kind of runs off with an iPad? But the iPad Pros, you can get ones that are like 12.5 inches. They are particularly nice for experiences where you can kind of share it with other people. So you can go around with like a child or like a friend or somebody, which is quite nice. And it also means you can kind of have specially made cases. So the one in the top corner there, we worked with like a fabrication company who made special cases for this one app. And social media filters, which you can see a lovely another Aphex Twin one there. For small, sweet experiences, filters are pretty awesome. Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and Blipper, they look quite simple at first glance because of all the silly hats and the silly faces and stuff, but they're actually like quite powerful. Personally, I've worked with the Facebook one the most, and it has its own JavaScript-based engine. It can track your face and various like facial gestures. It can track hands. So the one at the bottom here was an illustration that would like appear when it found your hand. And you can tap to place things. So the one in the top corner, which is kind of like a street scene, was a project with the British Council in India. And the effect, it's supposed to look like you've gone back in time. So we've put kind of camera effects on there to make it look older, and then you can place like an old-fashioned tram in the scene. And you can do kind of quite other fun little things as well. I managed to make like a little football game when the World Cup was on, where you'd control a football with your eyebrows. It was like quite funny watching people test that. Also, at the moment, I've got a Blipper-enabled advent calendar. So on the 1st of December, I opened up the Blipper app and then scanned my advent calendar. And it gives you selfie filters, and you get a new one each day. And we feel like it really improved Hitman. And you also have web AR. I don't know as much about web AR because I've not personally used it, but it's typically triggered by an image which is scanned by your phone's camera, which then takes you to a hosted AR experience, probably on your own website. Again, this kind of means that it has to be quite a small thing because you're relying on the user's phone and their data speeds and the power of it. And you need quite an ugly looking trigger image, really. They have to have like big black borders around it from what I've seen. But it's quite nice for like little things like this, where this guy's obviously got his business card, and when you scan it, it shows a little version of him, which is quite cute, really. And I think this is something that's only going to get more and more, it's only going to get better, really, again, as like all of this will when the technology improves. And you also want to consider the user experience of the people who are using your AR experience. For many people using any app that you create, this may well be the very first time they use AR. They may not even use smartphones or touchscreens on a regular basis. So you kind of need to think about the audience of the product that you're creating. If you are making something for like a tech savvy audience or a gaming audience, then you can make stuff that's a bit more complex. But really, I would assume that anyone who's using your app has never used AR before, and so you've got to make it as absolutely simple as possible. As designers, it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone has access to what we create, regardless of their ability. But by taking effort to make the apps more accessible, we give like everyone who uses it a better experience. According to a Scope, who are a charity campaigning for the equality for the disabled, 13.9 million people in the UK have a disability, and these are all people that won't be able to use, that might not be able to use your app if you don't consider different accessibility options. I have some more figures, but PowerPoint isn't letting me see them for some annoying reason. But it's important to use high contrast colours within any apps you create. And online, I think they're called W3C. They have guidelines of the contrast levels that should be seen on websites, and that's kind of a good guideline to go with. That kind of shows how much contrast you should have. And if you're making text appear in AR, well, you don't know what's going to be behind it, so you've got to take extra special care to make sure that anything that does appear has sufficient contrast. So put either a box behind it or outline the text. And don't rely on just using text to communicate. Use symbols, use patterns instead of just using colours, because there are plenty of people who won't be able to distinguish so well if they have colour blindness. Anyone who has like dyslexia or low sight might not be able to see if you've put too much text on the screen, because we're only dealing with quite small screens at the end of the day. So combine sounds and words as well, instead of just relying on one or the other. On Google's website, when they talk about virtual reality, they say to kind of keep anything that you create in a digital world to kind of a 270 degree around the person, which is kind of like that. So it's anything within someone's peripheral vision. I would say that's a good thing to think about as well when you're augmenting things in the real world, because people may not have so much like dexterity or upper body movement that they can just kind of like turn and twist very easily to interact with whatever you've made. And keep the screens as clutter-free as possible. Really just try and keep everything looking nice and simple. And test on everybody. Test on as diverse a group of people as possible. People from different backgrounds, people with different levels of tech knowledge and different abilities. This is something that I've kind of found in the past when I've tried VR experiences that were made by companies where everyone's quite tall. I'm only 5'2", and I've tried like VR simulations where I just can't see anything because it's made for someone who's like a good foot taller than me, and that's a little bit awkward. Also, when facial recognition was in its infancy, it seems that it had only been tested on people from a Caucasian background. So anyone who had slightly different features, like different shaped eyes, or with darker skin, sometimes the technology like didn't recognize them, which is something that is really, really embarrassing. So you need to make sure completely like to test on everyone that you can. And like I said previously, people want to kind of curate their experiences. They want something that is unique and that is special to them. So don't just create a linear narrative for people to follow, because they just don't really like that anymore. Allow them to experience the features of your application in the way that they want to. And it doesn't matter if people don't complete the app in the way that you have set out for them to do it, as long as they're enjoying themselves and they're getting something from it, then that's the most important thing. I think it's the Smithsonian Museum in 2015, they had an exhibition that was called Wonder, which is what these pictures are of here. And instead of kind of discouraging people from taking pictures, which is quite typical of art museums, they wanted everyone to photograph it. They wanted people to go around and take pictures and post them to Instagram. And people did, and it just made the exhibit really, really popular. Like, thousands and thousands of people came to see it because they'd seen all the pictures of it, and they wanted to go and experience it and take their own pictures and make their own narrative through it. So if you can kind of create, I know it's a bit of a long shot, but if you can create something that it provokes that much like wonder and excitement in people, then that's like really, really awesome. It's also important, it's also important that you set up your AR space correctly. If you've got an exhibition space in a show or in a museum, there's a number of things that the AR technology kind of relies on in order to anchor you properly in the real world, and it can kind of be surprisingly fussy about those things. So when you first open the app, it uses the camera and it wants to find floors and it wants to find walls, because then it knows where you are in kind of relation to those. So it needs somewhere that's kind of like quite well lit. Probably if I tried to open something up in here, it might work, but it probably wouldn't, because we're in quite a darkish room. So you need somewhere that's quite well lit. But you also don't want to have a space that's too shiny. So we found that when you're trying to run these things in places with long white walls or polished concrete floors, you can't find anything. It's also quite important to make sure that people are aware of stairs. It sounds a bit silly, but we've seen people get very into AR apps and then almost fall downstairs. If we make anything that has to go near stairs, we try and put like warnings up on the screen. But you can't, it's best to just stay away from stairs. And also be aware that because people get so involved in these things, they all walk into each other. So yeah, try and have like a good amount of space, or don't encourage people to walk and hold the iPad in front of their face. And a lot of these experiences, they need a trigger image to start them off, which you've probably seen like images of throughout the presentation. And these have a number of factors in them. So the programs that we use, they typically like flat images, so not ones with things coming out of them. They like them to be pretty much square shaped. Someone gave us a trigger image that was so long and thin it crashed everything and nothing would run, and that was not good. But work with designers to kind of make the best image. Also, if you're putting on an event where you have a lot of iPads or whatever device, then make sure that you have charging ports for them. The AR like runs down the battery like crazy, and it really, really heats up the devices. So it's ideal to have places that you can quickly charge up them. So we've used like these magnetic chargers before, which are really nice because you just kind of like click them on and things are away charging. But also have a few spares so that you can give the devices a proper charge up, and also swap them in and out so that when the devices, they heat up a lot, you can give them a chance to cool down. We even like invested in those ice packs that you'd put in freezer bags. We got like a bunch of those for a project where the devices were heating up so fast. And if appropriate, provide on-site support. Like I said before, this might be the very first time that anyone has used AR, and they kind of need a little bit of guidance through that. And by having people who are there and are enthusiastic about everything that is involved in the app, then that really, really helps the user experience for people. I think I've rushed through this quite quickly, really. But in conclusion, try and find the AR mechanic that best suits what you want to exhibit or you want to show off. Consider the experience of the user and how easy it is to understand and how much guidance they will need. Try to simplify everything as much as you can. Obviously, you still want everything to look really nice. Work with the programmers and developers to try and make things look as clean and as streamlined and good as possible. And try and make a memorable experience, because that's how people are going to remember you and they'll remember your exhibition. So thank you for listening, even though I've been a bit coffee. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, and this is me. I'm a little red panda, and if you'd like to follow the company I work for and see any of the things we do, that's Zuba VR.
So, any questions? So, Adam? Adam's not in the room.
I'm just speaker. That's fine.
Yeah, please, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so that was great. One thing I was curious about, because a lot of this seemed to focus very much on the computer vision side of things, very much focused on using portable mobile devices. I'm just wondering, have you sort of seen like things which are more like broader scope of augmented reality? So one thing I can think of perhaps was stuff using projection mapping. I think I saw a while ago this thing called dance room spectroscopy, which was, instead of using like portable devices, it actually modified the room itself, and it was interactive with the people who walked throughout the room, so it was augmenting reality in that way. And I'm wondering if, like, I just wondering, like, this, do you see sort of futures, sort of augmented reality in perhaps non-mobile spaces, or perhaps things that aren't so focused on vision mechanics, maybe other senses?
I'm not sure how to summarize that question, but that question was asking about whether augmented reality will be used on a larger scale.
Like just different applications, not necessarily so mobile and so visual focused.
And not so mobile and visual focused, and using more senses. I think that'd be really awesome. I think that'd be great. I know that in the past, when I was doing like some of the research for this talk, looking into the history of AR, they did use it more like that. They would kind of use like holograms or stuff on a much bigger scale. And there's always mentions of stuff like trying to involve like taste and smell. I'd love to see more people do stuff like that. And it'd be great if it did in the future.
Is this going to replace the old audio guides that you can get in museums at the moment? Because it looks like it's made those completely obsolete now.
So that question was asking if augmented reality will replace museum guides. Yeah, they have started to already. So one of the guys that I work with, he's worked on apps like that as well, where you can go to like Barcelona and go around galleries there, and yeah, it I think they use like geo positioning to kind of guide you around the galleries. And yeah, like you can have ones where you scan different pictures as you go around, and it will show up labels and it will show up videos. So yes.
Oh, we're all popping up now.
Thanks, Viki. That was a great talk. You alluded to it slightly, but I'm curious about the hardware limitations, and if you had a wish list of things that you could solve to make your augmented reality much, allow you to do much more, what would it be, or what would be on the list?
So that was a question asking what I would want what I would like on a wish list of hardware improvements. There's a number of visual things that we struggle with. So there's something that I've got quite into that's called like shaders within Unity. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's involved in making stuff look really, really nice. And there's a huge limitation of that in AR, because a lot of them just don't run on mobile. It'd be really great if they did, because then I can make stuff look a lot nicer. Also putting in like higher poly models. So with 3D models, they have so many faces on them, and obviously if they have more faces, then it's harder for it to run. If we could make them all run like really high poly models, that would be great too.
You've got a microphone now as well. So.
Yeah, great talk, thank you.
Thank you.
You track the location of the user by geo satellite stuff. What happens if you're in a building where that's not accessible? How would you do it then? Or in a cave or something like that?
So that does get a bit more difficult because they don't account for floors either.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't know like what floor of a building you're on a lot of the time. A lot of it, it's never quite exact anyway. Sometimes like I've found, like with Pokemon Go, like I do play Pokemon Go a lot, and I found that if I connect to like Wi-Fi, it throws it all off. It's a lot harder to set the position. So I think it's just something that has not been perfected yet, that hopefully will be.
You can't do the positioning by the Wi-Fi sort of network to like locate yourself?
I think some people have done experiments in it, but we've not personally like looked into that properly yet.
Okay. Any more questions? That's the mic down. Thank you.
Thanks. I was just wondering in terms of who's kind of leading this across the world? Are there markets sort of in Asia or the States? Or, where are they in comparison to where the UK is?
I don't actually know, to be honest. I know that like Apple and Facebook are both really, really pushing AR. Annoyingly, there was notes that weren't appearing, and that was something I meant to bring up, was the fact that Apple have had a huge big push into AR. They made big improvements to their AR software or their AR plugins just in September, and they're working with Pixar, I think, to develop a special file format for AR as well. So yeah, because they and Facebook as well are pushing so much for it, I think that's what's a big force behind the advancements in AR.
Great talk.
Thank you.
So with Facebook and Apple pushing for AR, do you think that it will become part of like people's everyday life? Like you will go around and build AR in your home?
I think a lot of people think that's where it's going. I've read a lot of articles where they're saying like it's just going to be the next thing that will be everywhere, that in a few years we won't kind of imagine our lives without AR. Because like there's all the games and all like the entertainment uses for it, but on iPhones now you've got like a measure app, so you can just kind of measure things instead of getting a tape measure out, and that uses the same software. And I think there'll just be more and more uses like that, and everyone will just get more and more used to using it, and yeah, it will become part of our lives a lot more.
Hello, thank you for that brilliant talk. I work in the events industry, and your title has about exhibits, and I was interested whether in the exhibition world, so to have that augmented reality experience where you bring your visitors to your stand and go, this is the experience, as opposed to have your little box area,
Yeah.
and to completely enhance that experience for the people. So it's been done in the past in trade shows with not projection mapping, but they used to have like projection like they have on Strictly, and people, you can see kind of interactive stuff happening on the floor. And it also happened in AR, in large scale, non-portable device things. But is there a movement in the events industry and exhibition towards that, in like making the augmented experience, as it were?
Yeah, one of the projects that, if I go back a little bit, don't know if I can go back far enough. So, sorry. So this one was part of an exhibition.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So it was at a biking show in London. So they had set up all these like glowing cubes, and yeah, you could go around, you could pick up an iPad that was on the stand around there and look at all the stuff around it, which is obviously like very, very simple usage, but yeah, absolutely. I think it's got a great place in events. It's also kind of like quite a novel, fun thing for people to interact with at events. I can't remember the name of there's a big like American music festival that everyone goes to. But they had an app this year that had AR in it. Right. So you could place like this disco shark in the world, and it would like sing to you and stuff. Or you could find certain things around the festival that you could scan and then interact with. Right. So it's all, yeah, it's definitely got a place in the like events world.
Any more?
Hi. So this year when Adobe did their big conference, they released Adobe Aero. I don't know whether you have seen it.
I've signed up to the beta of it, but they've not got back to me.
So this is just a question around like the ability to start using AR and start developing for AR when you don't necessarily have the kind of coding background or the coding experience and that kind of thing. So how accessible do you feel like it is at the moment as far as what you need to learn to be able to produce things, and how, I mean, Adobe are going some way at making that accessible, but I'd love to hear some of the experience of how you go into it.
Well, I already had like programming experience when I started working in AR. I kind of like worked in video games before and learned programming that way. But the all of the Facebook filters, I've advised a lot of people to like try with those when they've been starting to get into AR. I did say it's like it's a JavaScript based engine, but they've got a lot of visual scripting in there as well. So what that means is you can just open up the program and pull stuff into the scene, and in like a couple of seconds you can make people have strange faces. You can put like hats on people. I did a workshop a few weeks ago with some girls who are like secondary school age, and in about 10 minutes we made a very simple thing where we could take a picture of, I took a picture of like artwork that one of them did and put that into the program and just connected a 3D model up to it, and we made a mug appear on the picture. And that was like super simple to do. So if people were looking at trying to get into AR in the simplest way possible, I would say to maybe look at like the Facebook stuff. They use a program called Spark Studio. It's only available on Mac at the moment, but I think the Windows beta is like just about to start, which I'm quite excited about because I don't have a Mac. Yeah. Any other questions?
Right. Thank you, then, Viki.
Awesome.